All right, let's jump right into this explainer and unpack what was, frankly, a watershed moment in the history of software development. We're talking about the devastating May 2026 cyber attack. It's a story packed with a really dark irony, because the exact tools developers trusted the most to build secure software, yeah, those were the ones turned completely against them. Today, we're going to break down exactly how a highly sophisticated threat actor managed to compromise the global supply chain and leave millions of people totally exposed. 5.3 million. Let that number sink in for a second. That is the staggering number of developers globally who unknowingly installed compromised extensions. Basically, they handed over the front door keys of their systems to a state-sponsored APT group. And remember, these weren't amateurs. These were seasoned senior engineers who thought they were just pulling down routine updates to their coding environments. And that single coordinated digital heist led to an absolutely mind-blowing fallout, an estimated $3.5 billion in financial losses. The blast radius here was so incredibly massive because, well, the attackers didn't bother targeting just one company. They went straight for the source. They targeted the people building the software for every single company. Okay, Section 1, the vulnerable supply chain. So, to understand how this catastrophe actually happened, we really have to look at the massive vault these attackers were targeting. We're talking about GitHub and Microsoft's VS Code. I mean, these are literally the vital arteries of global software development. You've got GitHub hosting over 100 million repos, and VS Code sitting at 75 million active monthly users. But here was the critical vulnerability: the VS Code marketplace. With its 40,000 plus customizable extensions, it was just the absolute perfect Trojan horse opportunity. Developers had this blind, almost faith-like trust in that ecosystem, right? They routinely installed tools to customize their workflow without even a second thought. Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of the Breach. The nightmare unfolded incredibly fast, just a few frantic weeks in May 2026. It kicked off with some subtle alarm bells around April 28th, just some unusual encrypted egress traffic. But then, by May 1st, scattered reports started rolling in from devs having weird project compilation failures. Just 3 days after that, the breach was officially confirmed, and this all culminated in a massive public emergency alert on May 9th. The speed from initial anomaly to full-blown crisis is just staggering. So how did they actually pull it off? Honestly, it was an absolute masterclass in bypassing modern security. They kicked things off with targeted recon of key GitHub engineers. Then they hit them with incredibly convincing phishing campaigns using fake domains to steal MFA-protected credentials via OAuth abuse. They combined that with a zero-day cloud vulnerability to escalate their privileges. But here is the real genius of the whole operation. They bypassed source code reviews entirely. They did this by secretly injecting their malware during the final extension packaging phase. Meaning, if a dev meticulously reviewed the source repository, everything looked completely fine. They'd find absolutely nothing wrong. Section 3. How CodeSiphon worked. Let's actually look at the payload itself. Security experts dubbed this highly sophisticated piece of malware CodeSiphon, and it was a total masterpiece of evasion. It operated almost entirely in memory, completely avoiding writing files to the disk. It used pre-installed scripts tucked inside the extension package to execute covertly, communicating with a global network of proxy C2 servers over encrypted channels. And get this, it was smart enough to detect if it was sitting in a virtual analysis environment or being watched by anti-malware tools. If it felt it was being watched, it would just immediately stop what it was doing and hide in plain sight. Traditional antivirus? Virtually blind to it because it left absolutely zero footprint on the hard drive. Once CodeSiphon knew the coast was clear, it was ruthless. It sank its tentacles into everything. It systematically harvested cloud API tokens across AWS, Azure, and GCP. It stole SSH keys, it quietly drained crypto wallets, but the absolute worst part, its code injection capabilities. It could silently inject secondary backdoors right into the software projects those victim developers were actively building. And while it was doing all that, it achieved deep persistence across Windows, Mac, and Linux systems. Now, this is the truly terrifying part, the sheer scale of the Trojan horses they used. The attackers didn't go after obscure, niche little tools. No way. They poisoned the biggest, most heavily relied upon extensions on the market. We're talking Python IntelliSense with over 50 million installs, JavaScript Essentials with over 40 million. They hit Docker integration, Git Lens, Remote SSH. These are extensions that fundamentally require deep, unfettered access to a developer's system and their source code to even function. All right, Section 4, the global fallout.
The cleanup for this was monumental. It took a massive, coordinated response from Microsoft, GitHub, CrowdStrike, Mandiant, and global law enforcement. But the damage was already done. The attackers walked away with over 180 terabytes of highly sensitive data. More than 80 different extensions were found to be infected and had to be aggressively purged. And for 14 agonizing days, the threat actors had unmitigated access, hitting victims across more than 120 countries worldwide.
When you stack this up against historical disasters like SolarWinds or Log4Shell, CodeSiphon's devastating efficiency is just crystal clear. Look, SolarWinds went undetected for roughly 9 months. CodeSiphon, it literally only needed 14 days to cause $3.5 billion in damage. Why? Because when you target developers directly, you're getting instant, widespread access to the keys to the kingdom for thousands of different companies all at once. Section 5, a new security era. This catastrophic breach shattered the developer community's blind trust for good. The transition was basically overnight. We went from this era where digital signing was sort of optional, used by less than 30% of extensions, to a strict, lockdown, new world. Today, we've got mandatory PKI digital signing for all extensions. Every popular tool has to undergo independent security audits. We use AI-driven behavior analysis to monitor for weird network comms. And dependencies are totally transparent now through mandatory software bill of materials, or SBOMs. The days of implicit trust? Yeah, those are completely over.
So where do we go from here? Well, to survive in this new landscape, developers have to rigorously stick to a strict action plan. You absolutely have to enforce the principle of least privilege. Only install what you actually truly need. Thoroughly audit an extension's reputation before letting it anywhere near your environment. Mandate hardware security keys, like YubiKeys for MFA. And please, absolutely never store credentials or API keys in your source code. Use dedicated secret management services instead. Ultimately, the CodeSiphon catastrophe taught us a very hard lesson. Our workflows are really only as secure as our weakest dependency. So, as you review your own workspace today, I urge you to look closely at the tools you rely on. I want to leave you with one vital question to ask yourself before you click install on your next extension. Is your environment truly secure, or have you already welcomed a Trojan horse inside your gates?